The Tenerife Airport disaster, when miscommunication became catastrophe. March 27, 1977. A quiet airport on a small Spanish island suddenly becomes the scene of the deadliest aviation disaster in human history. No bomb, no engine failure, no storm, just words. Words. Misheard. Misunderstood. Misused. Two fully loaded Boeing 747s, nearly 600 people on board, and one fatal mistake that would change aviation forever. This is the story of how a single phrase, spoken at the wrong time, triggered an explosion that echoed across the world. This is the story of the Tenerife Airport disaster, the worst accident in aviation history, claiming 583 lives. It happened at Los Rodeos Airport, today known as Tenerife North Airport, on the island of Tenerife. Two jumbo jets, one runway, and a chain of decisions, each one small, but together devastating. To understand what happened, we need to rewind hours before the collision. Scene 1, the diversion. It all started with a bomb. Earlier that day, a terrorist group detonated an explosive at Gran Canaria Airport, forcing authorities to temporarily close the airport. Flights bound for Gran Canaria were diverted, including two massive aircraft, a KLM Boeing 747 from Amsterdam, a Pan Am Boeing 747 from Los Angeles via New York. Both aircraft were rerouted to Tenerife. Now here's the problem. Los Rodeos Airport wasn't built to handle this level of traffic. It had only one runway, limited taxiways, no ground radar, and suddenly, too many planes. Aircraft were parked wherever space could be found, even along taxiways. This meant departing aircraft would need to taxi on the runway itself, and that would become critical. Scene 2, the players. Let's talk about the two aircraft. KLM Flight 48005, operated by KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, commanded by Captain Jacob Veldhuizen van Zanten. He wasn't just any pilot. He was the face of KLM training programs, a senior instructor, highly respected, highly experienced. But that day, he was under pressure. Delays, duty time limits, a need to depart quickly. Pan Am Flight 11736, operated by Pan American World Airways, a seasoned crew, hundreds of passengers. They had no idea they were minutes away from history. Scene 3, the fog descends. Tenerife is known for sudden weather shifts, and that day, thick fog rolled in. Visibility dropped dramatically. Pilots could barely see down the runway. Air traffic control. They had no ground radar. They couldn't see where planes were. Everything depended on radio communication. And in aviation, clarity is everything. Scene 4, the critical delay. As the airport reopened in Gran Canaria, aircraft began preparing for departure. But then, something unexpected happened. The KLM captain made a decision. He ordered a full refueling in Tenerife. Why? To avoid refueling delays later. But this added nearly 35 minutes. That delay meant more congestion, more pressure, and more impatience. Meanwhile, the Pan Am aircraft waited behind them, stuck. Scene 5. Taxiing into confusion. Eventually, both aircraft prepared to leave. But remember, there was only one runway, so both planes had to taxi on the runway itself. The sequence. KLM taxis to the end of the runway, turns around, prepares for takeoff. Meanwhile, Pan Am is instructed to follow the runway, exit via a taxiway, clear the runway. Sounds simple, but it wasn't, because the taxiway they were supposed to use, they missed it, and the fog made it worse. The Pan Am plane was still on the runway, but the KLM crew didn't know that. Scene 6, the deadliest miscommunication. Now we reach the moment everything changed. The KLM captain pushed the throttles forward slightly, then paused. He radioed the tower and said, "We are now at takeoff." That phrase was not standard aviation language. The tower responded with instructions. But at the exact same time, Pan Am also transmitted. The two radio messages overlapped. Static, noise, confusion. The KLM crew heard something, but not everything. They believed they had clearance. They didn't. The tower had not cleared them for takeoff. But the KLM captain started accelerating. Before we continue, if you're interested in real stories where small decisions lead to massive consequences, hit that like button and subscribe, because the next part of this story is something you won't forget. Scene 7. The collision. The KLM 747 is now accelerating down the runway, speed increasing. Visibility, almost zero. Meanwhile, the Pan Am crew suddenly sees something emerging from the fog. Lights, fast, huge, heading straight toward them. The Pan Am captain shouts, "There he is." He slams the throttles forward, tries to turn off the runway, but it's too late. The KLM captain sees them at the last second. He tries to lift off early, pulls back hard. The aircraft briefly leaves the ground, but not enough. The underside of the KLM jet slams into the Pan Am aircraft at over 250 kilometers per hour. The impact is catastrophic. Fuel tanks rupture. A massive explosion erupts. Fire engulfs both planes. Scene 8. The aftermath. The KLM aircraft is destroyed instantly. All 248 people on board are killed. On the Pan Am plane, there is chaos. Fire spreads rapidly. Some passengers manage to escape through broken sections of the fuselage. Others are trapped. In total, 83 people lose their lives. Only 61 survive. It remains the deadliest accident in aviation history. Scene 9. What went wrong? So what caused this? It wasn't one mistake. It was a chain. 1. Ambiguous language. The phrase "we are now at takeoff" was unclear. Modern aviation now requires strict, standardized phrases. 2. Radio interference. Two transmissions overlapping created confusion. Critical words were lost. 3. Captain authority. The KLM captain was highly respected. No one challenged him. Today, cockpit culture encourages questioning. 4. Fog and lack of radar. Controllers couldn't see the runway. Pilots couldn't see each other. 5. Time pressure. The KLM captain may have felt urgency due to duty limits. That pressure influenced decisions. Scene 10. How it changed aviation forever. The disaster led to massive reforms. Crew resource management, CRM. Pilots are now trained to communicate openly, challenge decisions, work as a team. Standard phraseology. No more vague language. Now it's cleared for takeoff, or nothing. Improved ground radar. Airports now track aircraft movement in low visibility. Better training. Simulations now include communication failures, because sometimes the biggest danger isn't mechanical, it's human. Scene 11. The human side. Behind the statistics were real people, families, children, dreams. Many passengers were on vacation. Some were returning home. None of them knew they were part of a moment that would reshape aviation forever. If this story made you think, if it made you realize how fragile even the safest systems can be, then subscribe. Because on this channel, we break down real events that changed the world, so we can understand them and never repeat them. And if there's another disaster you want explored next, drop it in the comments. 1 runway, 2 planes, 1 misunderstanding. The Tenerife disaster reminds us, sometimes it's not the loudest failures that cause catastrophe. It's the quiet ones, the ones hidden in a single sentence.